Hello, and welcome to Artifacts, a living archive preserving the first-person stories of avant-garde, queer, and underground culture told by those who lived it. Today's episode is part of our Downtown Performance series, developed in conjunction with NYU Skirball, spotlighting the visionary directors, performers, and artists who transformed experimental theater in New York and beyond. After the Angels of Light visited New York, Jimmy Camicia recognized the need for a theater created by gay artists for gay audiences, spoken in a gay vernacular. In 1972, he wrote The Wizard of U.S., the first of dozens of productions that would define the anarchic spirit of the Hot Peaches. What began as an ad hoc, ever-shifting collective became New York's first explicitly queer theater company, sustaining more than 2 decades of continuous performance while fusing agit-prop street politics, topical satire, drag performance, experimental theater, cabaret, and above all, a fierce commitment to entertainment. Among the performers associated with the Hot Peaches were Peggy Shaw, Marsha P. Johnson, Ian MacKaye, Jackie Curtis, Wilhelmina Ross, Betty Bourne, and Ondine. Camicia's productions toured widely throughout Europe, transforming theatrical fabulousness into a cultural weapon on behalf of queer visibility, liberation, and self-invention. The Hot Peaches was an important link in the chain of queer performance groups that began with the Cockettes and Angels of Light and continued to Blue Lips and Black Lips.
All you had to do to be in one of our shows was want to be in a show. I didn't give a shit. I mean, why should I? See, you're thinking of acting, you're thinking of theater. I never thought in those terms. I thought more in terms of art. When I did a play, instead of painting on a canvas, I'm going to paint on the stage. Instead of using oils, I'm going to use people and dialogue and music. It was a bar show with a plot. A bar show is usually when there's a drag queen who is doing her material. It's basically songs and jokes, scatological, generally speaking. That's what the Hot Peach thing was, except it was a plot. I never saw it as theater, which is probably why I never related very much to Charles and John, because it just was, that was of no interest to me.
I had a girlfriend who was their stage manager, Hellas, and she told me I had to see these guys. And so I was in the corner of 7th Avenue and 4th Street, and suddenly there was a drag queen in a lamppost singing the Welfare Blues, and that was Wilhelmina Ross. And then after Wilhelmina finished, it was Lola Star, and I went, who are these people? Wow. So we all moved down to the Silver Dollar Cafe, but we ended up at the Hudson River at sunset, and we all took a tab of acid and sang as the sun was going down. And I thought, wow, if this is theater, I'm not going to be an artist anymore. I'm going to go into theater. I joined the circus, basically.
My concern was, do gay theater for gay people. There was a lot of theater by gay people. There was a lot of theater about gay people. But there was no theater for gay people. It wasn't just like, oh, you're gay, come on and see this. It was like, you're gay, you belong here. Come on, you'll like this, da-da-da-da-da. It was more like that. I thought that was a very interesting concept, and I didn't see it happening anywhere. The closest we came to it was probably the Cockettes and the Angels, and even that wasn't it, which is why Zamba said, I wanted to be clearly gay, because he had been in with the Cockettes and had been with the Angels, I think it was the Cockettes, and it was obviously gay, but not clearly gay. You know, you could still say, well, this isn't actually really gay. It's just festive. You couldn't say that about our shows. Our shows were not simply festive. They were gay first, and then they were festive. I don't want them to sit here thinking he's giving us a message. What I want is to entertain them so that when they're walking home, they go, did he mean? I didn't want them to know that while we were doing it, because that would be pointless. See, if they knew it when we were doing it, we would become that would be that. When the show was over, that issue would be gone. But if you don't get it exactly until later, then you're asking questions. And it also gave me a platform to say things. And people at that time were just beginning to be frank about being gay. Just beginning.
We all felt like we needed to discover what we were anyway. We weren't just going to be in the closet anymore. We weren't going to just hide and get beaten up and everything. We were going to deal with who we were. So, and that I felt like was Jimmy's golden thing that he did, is write stuff for people like International Crisis, who could be so fabulous and yet say such wonderful poetry at the same time. What I loved about Hot Peaches was that they weren't just surviving on the street. They were dealing with their personalities because Jimmy created a space for them to express. We had a big dance at college. I went with a big leather jacket as a guy with Eva's motorcycle repair written on the back of my jacket. That was blatantly, I didn't name it. It was just, those things you did. And other people, why don't they just say, I think you're queer? I say to people, you're queer, aren't you? Just so that saved them 5-10 years. I wish someone had done that for me. Just say, wow, you're queer, I'm in love with you. Why don't, if somebody just outed me in high school, it would have saved me years. So for Jimmy, it was writing the truth, or what he saw people living, the truth. Street queens in the West Village were living the truth, their true selves. Marcia was changing clothes between Christopher Street and going back to New Jersey as a boy. Marcia would come in and change clothes as a girl on the train. Nothing we did was ever considered acting. This was carrying on the Cockettes and the Angels from the West Coast. Jimmy was carrying that tradition on.
This is how I got onto it. Angels of Light came to town. Hibiscus and Jack ran the Angels of Light. They did a show, everybody wanted to be in it, blah, blah, blah. It was a big deal. Uptown hated them, downtown adored them. But then Jack and Hibiscus left town. They went on a holiday up in the mountains someplace. And they left these people from San Francisco behind. Zamba, Jack Tree, and Reggie were the three that I got closest to. I was very friendly with them. They were getting very frustrated because Zamba said, we came to New York to do a show, not on our sit on our asses all summer. Jack or Reggie said, well, let's just do a show. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that there was no theater which spoke to me as a gay man. It was either about gay people from a straight perspective or by gay people who were trying to do straight stuff. One of the patterns I was interested in was black theater. It had been always presented by white people, and then black people started presenting it themselves, and it became more interesting because I never found it of interest, all that shuffling stuff and all that crap. Whether it was me or my background or what, it just didn't draw me. It was like something I just no interest. But then when you had black people writing about black people, that was interesting to me. Suddenly it was like, where were these people before? That was one of the patterns I wanted to follow. I thought, yeah, this is the same deal. They don't really know who we are because we're talking to them. We're not talking to ourselves. And we're using their language, not our language. By the time I got to Alice, I was writing stuff that I knew straight people would not understand. The language, I don't mean the issues, the language. And I knew gay people would understand it. Miss Thing swished in and blah, 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 mop this and that. I knew straight people didn't know what that meant. And I was really aiming for that. I thought, oh, that would be such an interesting thing to do. Because when you do that, what happens is the gay people in the audience get it. They know you are talking to them. And they know, and if you're going to talk about them, you might as well talk to them. That is what happens when you address an audience who had not been addressed in their own terms. They're suddenly there in the room with you. You see, that's what that is. And I got that very early on. And it was luck. And it was from those queens in California, because they were very political. But they were political not in terms of Democrats, Republicans. They were very political in terms of feminism, gay rights, this kind of stuff. Gender, color, races, all that stuff. And I thought they were way ahead of the queens in New York. You know, because queens in New York spoke it, but they didn't really live it. And the queens, at least the ones I met from California, they were living it. They were there. They were very aware of it and trying to do it in a world that didn't do it yet. I didn't know what to do, but I knew that if I didn't do something, I would be hanging out with them because they'd be doing something else. So I said, well, what should we call ourselves? Hot something, he said. That was a big thing with the California queens. And I said, okay. So we were in a supermarket, a grocery store. And they were taking pot shots, hot bananas, hot this, hot tortillas, hot this, and somebody said hot peaches, and Samba said, oh, that's good. So we went with hot peaches. It was the first show we did, and it was done in Jackie Curtis's loft over on 2nd Ave. We planned to do it for a weekend. The show was based on The Wizard of Oz. It was called The Wonderful Wizard of Us. It was basically that story. We had songs through it, and the songs were all these old songs, but with the words changed to fit the script. And there were some exceptions, like the guy who played Dorothy wanted to sing The Man That Got Away, which fit into nothing, but it was that kind of show. He wanted to sing it, so sing it. And because Jackie Curtis had a part at the end, everybody wanted to see it. They didn't want to see us. They wanted to see Jackie, of course. Oh, she had it down. I mean, we all looked like, we just had shit thrown together. She looked like she stepped out of, some big cabaret. She had fishnet stockings with a little black thing, a top hat. It was only about that high, but like 3 steps or something like that. And she sang this song going up these steps. I mean, it was really a polished thing. So the place was packed. And so we said, well, place is packed. Let's do another weekend. Fine. However, the guy who played the piano, David Lucas, couldn't come. Well, this didn't really sink in until the night of the show and the audience is sitting out there. Finally, I went out there and I said, listen, the pianist hasn't come. Can anybody here play the piano? We have some sheet music. And Minette said, I can play the piano, which seemed okay. I said, oh, great. So she came up, sat at the piano. And she played the songs. The only thing was, they were like the trolley song and all these different songs that we were used to singing the way people played them. But she played them in ragtime, which was a very different thing. I mean, we managed. And that was how I essentially met Minette.
Jimmy would sit down with Minette and tell him the plot lines and the stories, and I think I want a musical number here. And the storyline is, and she says, I know a song that's like that, but Jimmy's a very good lyricist. Know which sheet music or song that would fit in perfectly, and that she did help in many shows, not credited really. She didn't need that, but she was helping so many shows that highlight numbers were these, and you didn't have to give royalties because these were songs known to her, but not to anybody else. And with new lyrics, it was just wonderful.
I hate to see
that evening sun go down. I hate to see that evening sun go down. He's my baby, and he done left this town. There had been 3 or 4 shows up to then. They were free, which I very much wanted them to be. And Ian decided, for some reason, that we were going to charge. So $2, whatever, I don't even remember what it was, which I didn't like very much, but, you know, I let it go. It became very popular, the show. So we started to make money. And Ian said, if we could make money here, if we had our own place, we could really rake it in. Of course, he didn't think of paying the rent. We started doing shows in this loft, and he really fixed it up. Somebody was getting rid of a theater, so he got all these theater chairs for free that you screwed into the ground type. It was really very together. I would say, we need a curtain, he'd make a curtain. And I keep telling people, I did nothing. I still don't understand what a director is. Everybody has told me I'm a director for ages. I don't even know what that means, except you do everything from mopping the floor to getting rid of the problematic actor. I mean, but what that actually comes down to, I don't know. Upstairs was the dressing room, downstairs was the theater. Once we got it, it became an issue not so much of doing a show, but of paying the rent. The first show we did there was Cinderella Brown, which I thought was a great idea, a black Cinderella. Well, nobody else thought that was such a great idea, and it didn't get the rent. So now I was beside myself. What the hell are we going to do? We have this whole place, blah, blah, blah. And it was, the big thing at the time was Watergate. And I was not interested in politics at all. I knew nothing about it. But I thought, well, if you gotta bring them in, Watergate. So I read everything I could. I didn't understand half of it. And I put together this show called The Watergate Scandals. Well, it went like the bomb. I mean, they were lined up along 6th, 7th Avenue, whatever street that was. You couldn't even fit them all in. So we made the rent, and it was demented, because everybody left that show going, what the hell does that have to do with the Watergate? I had no idea. You know, the only thing I really knew was Martha Mitchell had a big mouth and would call people from the toilet late at night, so we put it in. So we did that until I couldn't stand it anymore, and then we took that off. I think once we got the rent and a half of the next month, I was fine. It never occurred to me that we did musicals. I didn't see it that way. I thought we did shows to entertain our friends and the audience. It was Michael Smith, many years later, who said to me, well, you know, your group was the only one who did all musicals all the time. And I said, did we? There was hardly any script, but you had to do something. So you throw in a song. And at the beginning, we'll use covers, you know, which also worked beautifully because everyone knew those tunes. So they felt very comfortable. But I never felt that I had to do a stunning theatrical production. That was not in the lexicon. You know, it was like, get it together as fast as you can so you can pay the rent. What, it's only 15 minutes? Put into 15 songs. It'll be 50 minutes.
Well, in those days, everybody was a hot peach. You know, Jimmy eventually had that Crystal Street loft, and everyone who performed there was then a hot peach. So there were millions of hot peaches.
Nobody knows what it was about Marcia, but there was something about her. Audiences every place all the time just went nuts. There was just something about her. They just loved her. And even when we took her to London, in London they said, the best thing in the show was Marsha P. Johnson, but she seemed to be having a bad night. Little did they know, she wasn't having a bad night at all. That was what she did. Audiences adored Marcia and made an effort to make it clear to her. Don't ask me how this worked. I just know it worked this way. That they liked her. After every line, they would go nuts, cracking up, laughing, screaming. I gave her this little song to sing. She couldn't remember anything, so I wrote out the thing, put it in her heart. You know, she'd read it from the heart. And tell the audience, I can't remember anything, so they wrote it for me, and I'm going to read. So every night she goes out and sings this song, a very brief song. Couldn't have been a minute. Totally fucked it up. And the audience went berserk. So one night I take her backstage and I go, Marcia, look, let's go over this song. Let me show you how it goes. Okay. You know, Marcia gave you no resistance. I showed her the way it goes. She got it. She goes out the next night. She does it the right way. She gets a nice response. She comes off. I said, good for you. She goes out the next night, fucks it all up again. I said, Marcia, what happened? She said, they like it better this way. And they did.
He was a high energy Scorpio. He was fabulous. He would light up a room, Ian. Jimmy thought he was fabulous and he was this and that and he was the writer and all that stuff. But Ian was the clown, the big personality, the wonderful, smart, very smart. Him and Jimmy had a very explosive relationship. They didn't really get along. They loved each other, but they didn't get along. And he was the one that brought us all together. Although very spirited, very energetic, fabulous performer who would also wear heels and be really taller than everybody. And he was so charming and so positive. We'd get quite depressed, but he would keep it to himself. I'm not sure I would have survived without Ian. He had a way of upholding a center of some kind. He was a center. He would just take my daughter's hand, and I was so fucked up. You know, a lesbian in the 70s.
She had a sensational personality, very up, very friendly. We needed somebody. And I said, you want to try for this? So she said, sure. She read the part. I mean, for a first reading, it was like fabulous. This queen had it completely together. She was better than everybody else, except for Undine. But you know, it was that kind of thing. As a young guy, she had been very connected with these chorus girls in some Latin Quarter show. I don't know how, but she was like the kid that came into the dressing room sort of thing. And they taught her everything, which is why she looked sensational. This was not someone who just put on makeup. So I think she had been in show business for a long time. And I started to get this image of her, like there was this show person, but there was this other person that everybody was interested in because A, she looked fabulous, B, she had a great sense of humor, and C, she was very friendly. We got Wilhelmina because we went to see a show over at La Mama. I don't remember, maybe it was a Vaccaro show or something. And they were all rolling around on the floor, as they used to do. And she was rolling around with them, but she was in pink taffeta, and she just looked fabulous. And I said, who is that? She did not look like the other people. I said to her one day, you know, I've always seen you in drag. I'd like to see you, what you look like, because I couldn't picture her out of drag. I couldn't picture her as a man in male clothes. A couple of days later, she came in, looked the same to me. She said, well, I said, well, what? She said, look, she was wearing all men's clothes. She looked like a woman in men's clothes. I mean, it cracked me up. She was very sweet-natured, mild-mannered, and elegant. She was elegant. I think it's because she was tall and thin. You know, people are like that. They kind of stand like that. Very elegant. Didn't push herself, but didn't take any garbage from anybody either. And just loved being on stage. She just loved it. Getting dressed up, being on stage. She was, in terms of talent, she always worked the audience really well. But she had very high standards. And after the show, we met her, and we invited her to come and be in the company. I got a call a couple of years ago from the Tate Modern. We have these paintings that Andy Warhol did of all these drag queens, but one he did over and over and over many, many more times. Apparently he did 26 portraits of her. Who is this? What do you know? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, well, it's Wilhelmina Ross, blah, 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 blah. For some reason or other, he was fascinated with her. Just Wilhelmina did look good. The way she dressed, the way she moved. She really was not just another drag queen. And I don't know why. I think maybe because the thing for her wasn't so much drag as being female. And I think were she alive today and younger, she'd be one of these people who would transition completely. Which you can't always say about drag queens. That isn't necessary. Someone like Tui would never. Sister Tui, for two and all, what fascinated me about Tui was his habit of dropping two-and-alls, which make you very tired, on the weekend, dressing up like a nun, and hitting up the bars. How does that happen? Well, it turns out he was brought up in an orphanage and fell in love with the nuns and said to them, one day I'm going to be like you. Well, obviously found out that wasn't so easy, so he did it his way. But the good thing about Tui is he could control it, because he only came drunk to one performance, and he was with us a very long time. And when he showed up, I threw him out. I said, just out, 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 out.
Oh, Tui hated women. He hated lesbians. He hated everybody. He was quite a queen, Tui was. Oh, my God. An hour after we started the show the next night, Tui'd come in the middle of the show saying, it's me, I'm here. It's like he'd already missed like his first 10 cues, things like that. And Tui would have his fur coat on, and people would say, you can't wear, because it was the 70s, you can't wear a fur coat, that's animal cruelty. Get yourself together. And go, I will get myself together as a gay person, and then I'll worry about being a vegetarian. Something like that.
I would say a very typical orphanage kid. There was no base to him. He was never, like Wilhelmina was static. That was her. You knew it. It was always going to be her. It was her before you met. And this Tui was not like that. Tui could be anything tomorrow. And I always, although people thought it was terrible, but I thought it was perfect for Tui, wound up at some point in Paris. No one loves Paris like Tui did. I mean, he was like totally into that trip. Begging on the streets. And I thought, oh, he must have loved that. I mean, it was so, he was masochistic. And I thought, oh, he must have. In Paris, begging on the street, oh boy, his movie is made. And no one else I know I would think that about. Zamba was very informed politically, sexual politics wise, but I think also politically. And very much a hippie, but coming out of that. You know how there was a point at which everybody was a hippie. And then slowly they came out of that. They just became marijuana smokers. I don't know what the hell they became.
All these people who were quite lovely and quite hilarious and charming, and they wanted to have music. They knew I played the saxophone, and so they asked me to come to Key West for their first big tour. It sort of gave me the opportunity to just do whatever I wanted to do musically. We did an hour version of I Will Survive, and I took like a 20-minute sax solo. My career in downtown music really started with the Hot Peaches, and that so few jazz musicians were comfortable around gay situations. And especially at that time, and the Hot Peaches and Jimmy had a place on Christopher Street, and once a week or once a month they would have these concerts, and I would bring these jazz musicians who would constantly think that somebody wanted to suck their dick, but in fact they were just people, you know. I was really the only real jazz musician that I knew that was in the gay world, you know, and it was so important to my music and the theater that became very much part of what the Jazz Passengers was. And the Jazz Passengers was my band that had legitimate, real avant-garde jazz credentials, and at the same time, you know, believed so deeply in downtown theater and the downtown, you know, like openness of the downtown aesthetic, which is very much a gay aesthetic, you know. And so I think those things were really important to who I became and what my aesthetic became. And they found this piano player, Jan, that they'd met in Holland, straight guy, much more straight also as a person. I mean, like just a good piano player who was very taken by the scene.
I was introduced to a whole lexicon I had never known. Coming out of the closet and into the streets. Straight, macho, queer, drag queen. With every rehearsal, another piece of this hidden world revealed itself. It was nothing less than a cultural shock. Together, they wove a message that was impossible to ignore. Homosexuals had been silenced, ridiculed, and forced into corners by the macho bravado of straight men for far too long. Now was the time to step into the light, to claim space, and to live unashamed.
One day Jimmy just said, "Let's go to Europe." There were, I don't know, 10 of us or 8 of us. We eventually squatted our own house on Hampstead Heath. It was on Frognall Terrace, actually. London hadn't quite realized that if you have food delivered outside of a restaurant, someone's going to steal it, because we were Americans and we had no food. We'd get orange juice, we'd get eggs, we'd get food. And I'd put them in my trench coat, and then we'd bring them back to the squat where we were all living. We'd go to other squats at night and get mattresses and leftover articles that people had put out. And that's when we really learned how to make our costumes out of the garbage, held over from New York. We would just make everything. So I guess what happened is Jimmy called the Oval Theatre in South London and said, "Can we do a show there or something?" We're from New York. It's called Divas of Sheridan Square. And they said, okay. And we did a show there, and Jimmy said, "We don't have any lesbian material, so you're going to have to perform and you're going to have to write something. Look, sister, take a look at your soul. Feel, sister, feel the truth of your role. They say they're gay. What does that do? Does it change their play to walk all over you? And they would be in the background going, ah, ha, 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 like ogres. It was so much fun. So I could get all my stuff out, and they could act like the ogres. I mean, that's when I learned how you can work with people who are not like you. That's how I started performing. I was at the end of my rope with men. Even though they were hot peaches, they were still men. I got mad because Jimmy said in an interview, which was only him and Ian, ended up being only Jimmy, is, oh, we let Peggy write. And I said, you let me write? So that was the beginning of the end. Anyway, okay, there's a flower pot. There's two flowers growing. One is a man and one is me. So this guy is getting all the sunlight, and it's growing bigger and bigger, and it's shadowing me. You know, the only way for me to get any sun is to take myself out of that pot and put myself in the sun so I can get as big as you. And that was how I left them. One night when Jimmy was dividing up the $20 we'd get from some gig in Queens, he'd say, I'm going to keep this money tonight because we need to be able to pay for going next time. And I had a kid. And I'd say, fuck you, Jimmy. This was at 3 in the morning at somebody's apartment. And I'd say, goodbye. And I slammed the door and I went out on 2nd Avenue. And Jimmy comes running out and he goes, good it wasn't. Bye it is. It's the best. We've used it in a couple shows. It's the best line anyone ever read. I said, goodbye. He goes, good it wasn't. Bye it is. Right? Isn't that great? That was it. I quit.
And it took a long time to kill it, too, let me tell you. It became things I didn't like. Here's the thing that really cinched it for me. I don't remember how it went, but probably went that I wanted to do another tour for Mark. Columbus Day was coming up, and I thought, I know what, it's Columbus Day. How can I, first of all, how can I get the jobs? Because, you know, if you're going to tour, you need a show that people are going to watch. So I wrote this dog of a show, I mean dog, called Christopher Street Columbus. It was awful, but everybody booked it. This is what I saw really what the theater was like. You don't need good theater, all you need is commercial theater. Columbus show on Columbus Day, hey. Like an Easter show on Easter, everybody's gonna go. I found that very depressing. I did, and I think that was really the thing where I thought, oh no, I don't wanna do this anymore.
Artifacts is a free oral histories platform. Please like, subscribe, and visit our website, www.artifacts.movie, for exclusive bonus content. If you're able, please make a tax-deductible donation at www.artifacts.movie/donate. Hit the link on screen to watch another Artifacts interview.